A badge of honor. Police officers and first responders wear badges to let their communities know they are here to protect and serve. But that's not how it feels today, and the stress of the job is taking its toll, taking lives through suicide and post-traumatic stress injury. A Badge of Honor podcast features the cast of the same name, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno. Sam, John, and the team offer the first responders workshops through their critical incident stress management teams and mental health liaisons to offer state-certified T-COLE credit programs that save lives. It's time to smash through the stigma. It's time to heal from your injury, and it's time to back our blue. Welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast. Here are your hosts, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno.
Hey, welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam, powered by the OBBM network, streaming on mostly every streaming live video place you can get your hands on, including Roku TV. Check us out, look at our website, and follow our past and our future stories, man. This is Mental Health Monday. And, you know, Sam, everybody's coming down from a weekend of almost tragedy. You know, it's never okay to shoot at a political opponent. Anybody one of our political leaders.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter who
political violence is wrong.
Political violence is wrong, 100%, and it doesn't matter what side you sit on, either red or blue. That is still a human being that you're taking a shot at, and you know, I don't care how much you dislike a person. There is no reason to get onto social media and wish somebody didn't miss. That is the most horrible thing a human being can do to another. And I know it's weighing heavy on a lot of people, supporters and non-supporters, because this just shows when someone could turn around and say how they are upset that bullet missed. That shows how diverse and how inhumane we have become as a country when people will say that about another person. And not only that, celebrities as well. We've had celebrities going on the air and it's doing the same thing. And it's just a horrible, and this what feeds into the violence in America, because people take this for whatever their mindset is as the green light to go hurt somebody else. And it's never okay to do that. And in this tragedy, in this ultimate tragedy, a life was lost. You know, and today we're going to dedicate our show to Buffalo firefighter Corey, and excuse me if I mispronounce his name, is Comparatori. He was a Buffalo fire chief, retired Buffalo fire chief, volunteer, which, you know, for those who don't know, volunteer fire departments are the bread and butter of our fire service. These men and women place their lives on the line for free. They don't get compensation. They don't get a retirement plan. They have other jobs. They work 40-hour weeks, but they still serve their community. And this terrorist took the life of a family man with 2 children and a wife left behind. And it's just a horrible, horrible thing. Plus 2 other victims who they didn't release their names were injured in this. And our heart goes out to the families and friends of all of those who were stricken by this terrorist act of violence. And we hope there's some way you can heal from this and grab some support, because it was just horrible. And to President Trump, you know, you are, I'm going to say it too, a fucking trooper, man. Let me tell you something. I am wearing red, white, and blue on this show tonight because of you, in honor of you, because you showed what the true American spirit is. You know, raising your fist up in the air and coming out of that like a champ shows how you lead, and shows the stamina, and shows the perseverance. And you know what? That's what America is all about. And thank you for doing that, because that really showed a lot of support in the American people. And we always knew who you were, but man, putting that fist up in the air really proved it there is nothing that could stop you, my friend. God bless you, Trump.
Yeah, and obviously, with my background, I'm looking at this and have answered a lot of questions. My phone basically has just been blowing up since Saturday, when all this went down in terms of the response. And there is, in the Secret Service, we operated as zero fail. There is no room for failure. Every team, and I do say team, it's not and we could do a whole show about this, but I want to be very respectful of our guest. It's not the detail's responsibility to secure a venue. The detail is responsible for the person, in this case, President Trump. The lead advance for the site and the site agents are responsible for putting together the plan, that site where the event is taking place, to do the briefings. Everybody has a mission. Everybody should have known their roles. This should have never happened, period. And the response, every video I saw him like screaming, move. You cannot have somebody, yes, they swarmed him, protected him, shielded him, but for a minute and 30 seconds, they did nothing but sit there.
Yeah.
They should have been out of the venue in a minute 30.
Sam, let me ask something. You being a retired Secret Service agent, and you've done these details. A third grade teacher could have seen that rooftop was in play during this presidential.
It's inside the secured area. It's 150 yards away.
Anybody could have seen that.
Yeah.
And like I said, not to take up too much time or place blame on anybody right now, because we want to wait for all the investigations to come out. But where do you think this failed? Do you think this failed on the planning committee? How could you miss such a vulnerable area, especially in a field? It's not like you're in New York City where you have windows in different elevations. You have 2 buildings or 3 buildings in a field. How can you not have those secured?
That's ultimately the question. And whether look, we never did our jobs without local resources. We rely on local resources. We're still the smallest federal agency out there. And that's why police, fire, rescue, they all matter when it comes to detail and doing an event like this. And, we have to see, there's so much speculation and, there's so much coming out that's just absolutely false. Like, where did you get that information from about statements being made? There's an active investigation going on. Everybody involved they're not making statements. Okay. Right. So that building should have been owned. It's inside very easily the secured perimeter, whether it was police, local police, state troopers, whomever was responsible for not allowing access to that is responsible, but ultimately it's the Secret Service.
Yep.
What can I say? I mean, and there should be a resignation coming. I'll say it. The director should absolutely resign. She has no business. She failed, and I'm not going to pick apart the agents and their performance, but it was a gigantic failure across the board. All teams involved
on so many different levels. But
that
you look at is the mental health of everybody involved. No matter how the failures are, no matter what the circumstances are, mental health is a priority.
They're going to need some support. Those agents and everybody involved are going to need some support. And I want to talk about the CAT team, or the counter sniper team that was on the roof. Everyone's like, big guns. Unless you've been around them and are in that concussive blast, you don't really understand how that works. Now, these guys, there was local SWAT, the guys in green. The way that they practice, the way that they train, exposes them to the flashbangs. It exposes them to concussive blasts. We started hearing about TBI and its role in post-traumatic stress a couple of years ago from the leaders at Copline, Stephanie, and it's now being brought out more and more that, when it comes to mental health, we need to take a step back and we need to understand how concussions, because you can get them playing sports when you're little, and then you go into the military, and then maybe you become a first responder, however your career looks. But it can have a dramatic and sometimes, drastic effect on performance. We got to take our first break, believe it or not. It's already that time. And when we come back, we are going to be talking to concussion expert, Dr. Leah Bortnick. She is leading the charge here in your neck of the woods over in the Bedford area, John. And she's going to provide some serious eye-opening insight on not only how it affects a first responder, but what we can do about it. So we'll take our first break and be back with Dr. Leah. Stay tuned, everybody.
Move freely, America, without medical restrictions or penalty. Without medical freedom legislation in place, our rights and freedoms are one vote away from being dissolved. Move freely, America, with one voice, without fear of retribution, achieving a common goal, medical freedom. We the people make our voices heard by connecting with state legislators and engaging a constitutionally compliant medical bill of rights for all citizens. Individually, change is improbable, but as an aggregate, attainable. It's time to act with one voice. My voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
To protect our freedom, creating one voice that cannot be ignored. This requires your voice, too. Move Freely America. Go to movefreelyamerica.org to find a chapter near you. Plug in, donate, and help our legislators defend our God-given rights under the Constitution. Move Freely America. My voice.
And my voice.
And together with your voice, we're one voice that cannot be ignored. Donate today. MoveFreelyAmerica.org.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam, with Dr. Leah Bortnick. Is that right?
Yeah, very good.
I'm always bad with the last names, sometimes even bad with the first names. But before we took our first break, we were discussing some of the things that happened over the weekend. And when we talk about SWAT officers and we talk about first responders, we talk about TBIs, concussions, and different injuries that even in training, not even in the actual duty, but even in training, can really impact the mental health of the brain, either short-term, long-term. And Dr. Leah, you are an expert in this field. And, myself, I have 2 TBIs that I was diagnosed with, and I know I have memory issues. And that's one thing a lot of first responders have problems with, is their memory issues, their speech patterns, their retention, their and how do concussions impact that? Yeah,
so tell everybody watching.
Well, I would say
a little about your background. First.
Not too far.
John,
no, I get it.
It's that brain pattern.
That brain pattern.
No, I totally get it. So hi, I'm Dr. Leah. I'm originally from Philly, and I came down to Texas because I just wanted to put down new roots someplace that was not Philly. And I love it.
It has good barbecue.
It does have really good barbecue. It's good barbecue. It's got really good momo, some Nepalese food. So yeah, it's great. It's great so far. But I would say that, just what you guys should probably know is I am a physical therapist by trade. I have my own clinic here in Bedford, which is a suburb of the DFW Metroplex. And I'm also a concussion specialist. I wouldn't say expert because there's still so many things I don't know. But I do prioritize working with veterans and first responders. So I see a lot of the issues that they bring forward and more holistically than probably most other clinicians do. And I just want to, throw out there that I myself am not a veteran. I'm not a first responder, but I used to work with them really closely when I was volunteering as a disaster relief first responder with Team Rubicon. And there was a flood relief operation that I was a planning section chief for in 2016. And that's when it really just hit me that my calling in this life is to really help people who run towards the fire stay healthy, stay in the fight, so that they can continue doing what they do best, which is serving others. And I never looked back. So I became a physical therapist to do just that.
Wow.
Well, thank you for that. Let's dive in now in terms of what statistics are showing when you've got a first responder. Let's just take a first responder who maybe played football, okay,
Sure.
high school football. Then they come into the first responder arena, and work starts to, I don't know, suffer, or they seem to be easily distracted all of a sudden. Just things that start out of the norm that people want to immediately say, oh, it's a behavior change, you're a first responder, it's got to be post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not quite sure that the pattern is always so predictable for people, because everybody truly is different. I think the most helpful way to really be aware of what's going on with you and maybe your partner is to really get a good understanding of what concussion symptoms are. So it can be new or worsening sleep disturbances, which again is difficult if you're doing shift work. It can be poor attention, poor memory, increased anxiety and depression, restlessness. It can be dizziness. It can be fatigue. It can be headache. There's a lot of symptoms that do happen to overlap with PTSD, which is what makes it so challenging. But anything that's new, right? So it's always good to talk to someone else, just, I think, to validate that, yes, what you're going through is significant. You're not crazy. It's not just one bad night of sleep that is making you slow. It's making you forgetful, foggy, things like that. It's probably a little bit more than that. If you're noticing that, there's not been one big incident, but it's been kind of growing, you're noticing a trend. Any trend that you're noticing is probably a good sign to either go to a mental health provider or to a physical therapist or to your physician and say, hey, I'm noticing some changes in the way that I think, in the way that I'm acting, and even my body, right? I never get dizzy. And now all of a sudden, I'm sitting up after laying down, and I never used to get dizzy before, and now I am. What's up? What's up with that?
Now let me ask something.
Good questions, to ask.
Let me ask some to a lot of the first responders that are out there now. Like I said before, I have 2 TBIs. Never even thought I would have them. As a kid, I was hit in the head a couple times. You fall.
Oh, that explains a lot, partner.
That explains a lot. I've probably been punched a couple of times during my years as a cop and hit my head as a firefighter, but I never went to the hospital actually for some concussion or went through those symptoms. And I think there's a lot of people out there that have banged their heads. They haven't had, since I didn't throw up or I didn't get sick or I don't have the classic signs of a concussion, I could have still sustained a TBI. And do you think there are a lot more people out there with a brain injury that maybe don't even know it?
I would say because so many of people who get a concussion once, let's say there was an incident, you got punched in the face and you got your bell rung, right? About 80% of people are going to have their symptoms completely resolve in 2 weeks. So those people are not generally people who are going to the hospital because they're saying, and I'm just going to wait it off, right, and then I'll be fine. But it's the miserable 20% of people who tend to have symptoms that they either don't go away or they're taking a really long time to go away. And that's something that a diagnosis at some point would probably be helpful because it lends to some other conversations about what the rest of your kind of life looks like, right? So what I mean by that is that once you get one concussion, one TBI, because that's all a concussion is, right? It's a mild TBI. Once you get one, it makes you more susceptible to getting more concussions in the future at a lesser force. So when previously it would take a really hard hit, either from football or from, getting slammed to the ground or an IED blast to make you lose consciousness. Well, now suddenly it's, it's turning your head too fast, it's slamming on the brakes, something that's a much lesser force, which can still give you a new TBI, and just learning how to adjust to something like that. Yeah.
Let's talk about that compounding effect. We got to take our next quick break. We will be right back. We are talking with Dr. Leah Bortnick. She runs a clinic to help treat concussions. Our first responders and our veterans are her passion, and that's where she spends most of the time because she wants to have us out there 100%. So we'll be right back, everybody. Stay tuned.
Interested in starting a podcast or TV show? Worried about what you'll say and how to keep it engaging? Think you'd like to be a guest on podcast, radio, or TV shows? Hi, I'm Susan Hamilton, owner and founder of OBBM Network, and I would like to invite you to an OBBM media training to get the tools you need for a relaxed and polished performance you'll be proud to share. Our specialized training techniques include role play, voice training, and everything you need to deliver a confident, clear, and engaging interaction. Go to offbeatbusiness.com. Go to the calendar and register for a training that's convenient for you. Dates available now, 214-714-0495.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. We have Dr. Leah, who is a concussion specialist. When we talk about, before we left, we were talking about concussions and TBIs within the first responder, and even as football players that move into, or just being a kid and moving into a first responder field, how common TBIs are and how they do affect your mental health, and how they can change different things throughout your life. And we become normalized sometimes with it. I know I started having reading comprehension problems, and I was like, I didn't understand why, like Sam, like with your book, I read your book, I would read 3 paragraphs, I would forget what I read. And so many people go through this and they think, it's a little older age, it's this, it's that, but it could be related to these issues, correct?
Oh, absolutely. So I would say one of the things that not just the military, but the first responders communities just get so heavily overlooked is the change in their senses. So one of the things that we know with concussion and TBI, right? So I can kind of use those interchangeably because concussion really just is a functional TBI. But what we do see is that sometimes there's vision changes. So maybe one eye is working stronger than the other, and it creates a disconnect when the brain tries to interpret the findings. And sometimes people just don't get their eyes checked by the right people. So what might be a reading comprehension problem, I can't retain the information that I've just read. If you don't see that playing out in other areas of your life, like, oh, someone was telling me a story the other day and I forgot that too. If you're not seeing a pattern like that, it might be interesting to get your eyes checked by either a neuro-ophthalmologist or a neuro-optometrist. Because what they can do is they can figure out, okay, well, maybe it's a comprehension problem. It's a pure cognition issue, right? Or maybe your eyes have lost the range of motion to go all the way to the right. And so you're getting lost when you're jumping, going back to the left, and you're losing your place. And then suddenly you can't find where you are. And so you forget. So they're finding that this happens sometimes in kids who have autism. They have issues processing sensory information, right? So you'll see kids are just the best at cheating, right? So they'll turn their whole body when they read. When you watch them, it's kind of interesting. Adults, it's a little more difficult to see. But one of the partners that I love working with in the Fort Worth area, almost all of his patients are neuro patients. So stroke, TBI, Parkinson's disease. He'll work with them, and he's really, really good at figuring out in the brain, is it a brain eye problem? Is it both? Where in the circuitry is the issue coming from? And he can prescribe different things that help the eyes compensate. And it can have a really, really big difference, not just in someone's memory problems, but sometimes their balance and their dizziness problems either go away or they decrease dramatically because suddenly the brain isn't having to work so hard to figure out where it is in space. And so there's no need for the brain to get so dizzy.
That's amazing. You know, I want to shift a little bit to talk about our special operators community in the military and law enforcement. And even I think John in another podcast we talked about firefighters and structural, like getting hit with stuff that falls. With coming into a new role. So, you know, if you're coming into law enforcement, obviously you're on the street, you're not a special operator right out of the gate. But when you come into that, and in training, we're using flashbangs and everything. If you're noticing that, let's say it's your first or second practice, because we're training, and you notice like your body feels different, or it was like you had to shake it off. We hear that all the time. Like, I just had to shake it off. That's the time to, like, that should be the light bulb moment, right? That's where you should be like, well, let me get this checked out. Now, why do you think more first responders don't?
I would say part of it is culture, right? There's such a strong tie to tradition and history within these communities that if the previous generation didn't take care of their brains and their mental health the same way that the younger generations are trying to, sometimes they can get pushback, right? So sometimes the reformers are going to get pushback based solely on culture. But I think what would help with something like that is to have administration create some kind of concussion protocol where if they're in academy, if they're training and they are having, you know, a flashbang training, that they're, you know, not doing any type of studying or classwork the next day just to give the brain a cognitive rest. So something in place like that where we can anticipate that you're going to give someone exposure to a concussion blast, some type of blast like that, and just kind of planning ahead for it so that the onus doesn't have to fall on the operator. It doesn't have to fall on them because they can't change anything, right? It's not like they can take themselves out of training because then they got to start over again, right? It's really the onus on the leadership that really should be stepping in, creating these protocols where, you know, brain health is baked into the training curriculum, right? Kind of what I would hope to see going forward in the next couple of years is that when it's not a stigma, we can talk about it just like, you know, someone having an elbow fracture. We can plan ahead. We know that this is a known risk, and let's just kind of mitigate it.
Well, I mean, there would be no question if they got into a car wreck and they're like, yeah, man, you know, I got knocked unconscious, you know, you're getting checked out.
But
so
Sam,
yeah.
You know, if a first responder, if it's not gushing blood or if it's a body part is not falling off, they're not going to the doctor, right? It's just that's our culture. If I could put duct tape on it, I'm good. You know?
Exactly, and it's not perfect.
It could be so easy as duct tape.
They don't understand, and now that we're still learning that even concussion, you don't even have to be hit in the head. That concussion blast from a flashbang. Or, you know, out on the range firing for a while, you know, the constant muzzle flash and the concussion of the
concussive blast that
can have a damaging effect.
I think that go ahead, Dr. Leah.
Well, I was just going to say it's also interesting when someone is in a training such as that where there's a lot of volume all at once, right? So the accumulation is a lot more noticeable. It's interesting clinically, I can tell what side someone fired heavy machinery on or concussive blasts like that because their inner ears get affected. So the most common way that someone knows that they have a concussion is, you know, they get ringing in their ears. usually if something was strong enough to create the tinnitus, the ringing in the ears, it's also affecting the next structure that's behind it, which is the inner ear, which is responsible for balance and the brain's awareness of where it is in space. Because there's three different balance systems. There's the visual system, which is the most dominant system that we all have in using for balance. There's the proprioceptive balance system, which uses sensory information from our feet and our hands to know where our joints are in space. And then there's the vestibular system, which is the inner ear. There's a bunch of fluid-filled semicircular canals that, based on how the fluid moves when you move your head, send signals to the brain, letting you know where you are in space.
Wow.
So.
Wow, that's a lot that goes into it. Let's talk about how, when we come back from our next break, how someone can really recognize within those systems that it's like, whoa, something's just different. So we're going to take our next break. We'll be right back.
Look, when you need to respond to an aggressive situation to protect yourself, your family, or your property, understanding your firearm and legal position are critical. Officers know your skills are only as good as your commitment to training. So know what you're doing. So when you're in a vulnerable situation, we can count on your response. Whether you're a beginner or a licensed gun carrier, Carry in Texas offers basic firearms training, Texas permitless carry courses, license to carry, and basic 2A courses so you can understand the responsibilities, situational awareness, and learn the technical skill required when you carry your firearm. Go to carryintexas.com to find the right course for you. Join me, former United States Secret Service agent Samantha Horwitz, on the range for beginner basics, LTC prep, and range practice. Go to carryintexas.com today. That's carryintexas.com.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam and Dr. Leah, concussion specialist here in the DFW area. Before we left our last break, we're talking about, we always talk about not all injuries are visible. And a concussion is one of those major ones that we were talking about. You talked about tinnitus, you talked about dizziness, you're talking about things that a lot of our first responders deal with on a daily basis. And they are not checked because, like I said, if it's not gushing blood or the body part's not full enough, they don't get checked. But we don't see our academies or our training programs doing follow-up work for concussion injuries that could maybe help the first responder out before it gets too late, too bad, or they diagnose it as something else, and then it turns into other problems.
Yeah, and I think the biggest part of that is that there's no baseline testing, right? So it's hard to know after someone got hit if this is just kind of their everyday thing, they are a forgetful person, or if they've had TBIs in the past, then it's just part of that. It's just part of who they are now. If we had baseline testing, what we could do is we could do what's called an oculomotor assessment, where someone is sitting down, and based on how their eye moves, with various stimuli, we can tell, okay, there's a breakdown in the circuitry between the eyes, the ears, and the brain, and the only reason that's likely to happen is due to a concussion.
How long does that take?
Oh, immediate.
So that is something that could be part of, like, your if you're hired, it could be part of your baseline health screening, and it doesn't take a long time to figure that out.
Yeah. So in the sports arena, the best sideline concussion test is called the SCAT, SCA. And that's what NFL is using. That's what all types of major athletic endeavors are using. I know a PT in assessment and selection for Air Force. That's what she's using on all the guys. It's just a really good, quick and dirty, but effective assessment of how the brain is working. So it gets the eye movements, it gets neck, it gets balance. What else does it get? A little bit of memory. But unless you have some kind of control before an incident, you're not going to know what the effects of a future incident are going to be. If you can't measure it, if you can't measure a change, it's hard to know if something's happened. Now, if it's gotten to the point where someone is stumbling, they're slurring up their words, where it's kind of an obvious thing where, they have no reaction time, they can't catch a ball, it's kind of too late if it's that obvious, right? Yeah. Like they should have already been in the ER, by now. Yeah.
So yeah, with more research in terms of, and we see it with the veteran population, even those that have written books, that have been in the special teams, that talk about, we did this flashbang, we threw in some type of explosive distraction device. And I remember in the soldiers talking about how he was too close and actually threw him on the ground, and he was throwing up, and it's just like he just kept going, and over time he realized the changes, and it's like this is not right. But at first it was being looked at as not a brain injury, like a TBI. It was being looked at as post-traumatic stress, because his memory was affected. He got really depressed because he couldn't figure out what was going on, right? And so, go ahead. I
was going to say, wouldn't anybody get depressed if, their whole life is declining and they don't know why, and all the doctors are saying, well, your scans are negative, you must be fine.
Exactly. So it's like, that's when you have to, that's what I think is the encouraging part here, is like, when you're noticing changes, let's address it on two different fronts. Okay, because it's your brain no matter what, whether it is post-traumatic stress or whether the concussions are causing some of those overlapping symptoms, which can be difficult if you don't have a skilled clinician to do that. But it's like, if I think personally, this is just my opinion, that as far as first responders, it's almost an easier sell to be like, hey, go to the concussion doc. Let's see, ask a couple of questions. Go see Dr. Bortnick. She's going to put you through some testing to see what this is. Because it's like, if I hurt my back, I'm going to go to a neuro or an orthopedist. It's affecting my job, right? So I think that it's in a way possibly an easier sell than what talking about. What do you mean I have to go to the head shrinker? Right,
yeah. Especially if you consider that concussion, when I say that it's really a functional disorder, it's because it's not showing up on diagnostics. That's one of the hallmarks of what a concussion is. Even though we know symptomatically people can be devastated by the nausea, the headache, the dizziness, the blurred vision, everything, right? And so it also can be the chicken and the egg. What came first, the depression and the anxiety, which we can tack over into PTSD, or this hit that they just had. And now we don't know which came first, the depression, being something that existed, or if it's due to the concussion, because it can be all of the above, right? And that's what's so frustrating about what a lot of doctors don't understand, is that just because it doesn't show up on imaging doesn't mean it's not being experienced. So imaging now very rarely diagnoses a TBI unless it's moderate to severe. Imaging is really used as a surgical tool, not a diagnostic tool. It's used to determine whether or not someone is going to die unless neurosurgery is performed. It's not used for diagnostics. So it can be really frustrating, especially in the ER, when someone's going in and saying, hey, I got hit, I'm struggling. Tell me what's going on with my brain. And the docs are like, well, there's nothing wrong with you.
Clearly they're having all these symptoms, so something's not right.
Right. Something's not right. Yeah. Especially, they're still having light sensitivity. They still can't drive. Right. You know, how many people have driving as an essential part of their job description when you're, you know, not just getting to your work, but when you're a first responder, maybe you're supposed to be driving this big rig, right? That's kind of important. It's being able to see straight.
Well, let me ask something, because a lot of first responders, one, like Sam said, are a little reluctant to go for therapy and this, that, and anything. So for the first responders that are out there and that are listening to this podcast, right? If they're feeling that dizziness, they're feeling that off balance, they're feeling the tinnitus in their, they hear they have the ringing in their ears. I want to come to see you. What's my first visit going to be like? What do I expect, you know, walking through the door? I know everything's confidential, but what do I expect? How are you going to treat me? What are the steps behind that?
Sure, it's a great question. So it's not going to be like the normal go see the PT and get your ankle sprain checked out. It'll be a little bit different. So there'll be a lot more talking in the beginning just to figure out exactly what areas of the brain are being affected, right? Is it more of an inner ear problem? If it's an inner ear problem, is it an electrical or is it a plumbing problem? Maybe it's both. Okay, so I need to test both. So what that looks like in PT is on the first day, we're going to be sitting down, we're going to be talking, usually with the lights off, because a lot of people are still sensitive by light. And it'll involve some testing of the eye. So I'll check the pupillary reflex, so shining the light in the eye, and then using a pen, making people follow it. Some coordination tests that are sitting down, you know, kind of tapping your hands. And then quite often it'll be an assessment of the head and neck altogether, especially if someone was in a motor vehicle crash, they had whiplash, or they had blunt trauma to their head. Anything that makes me think that, okay, maybe I really need to be checking the skull and the neck, right? So I'll lay down on the table. I'll take a look at your neck just to see how it's moving. If there's any pain or tenderness that might make me think that we need to either worry about something or not worry about something. And then I'll check the ear for dizziness, right? So one of the things that I do like people to know before they come in for a concussion exam is that in order to figure out what's causing your dizziness, I'm probably going to need to cause some dizziness, right? It's not like I have X-ray vision. So there's some head positions and body positions, you know, while someone's lying on the table, you know, that could produce some dizziness, but once we find it, we know how to treat it. And there's some very good results that physical therapists have in treating dizziness that's caused by concussion, or, you know, sometimes the crystals in the inner ear get trapped in the canal. And there's some maneuvers that we can do to honestly just get it out of the canal, and it dissolves and it goes away. So some of the patients that I get, they're really reluctant to come in because, you know, they're just scared of trying one more thing that doesn't work. And then they, you know, they give up and they lose hope. And, you know, I had one lady, and she came in and she just didn't really think that PT was going to help. And I did this Epley maneuver to get the crystals kind of out of her ear into the right spot so it could get dissolved, and her dizziness was gone and it never came back. And that was over a year ago.
Wow.
So you never know.
Simple, and you know, I want to reiterate, a simple maneuver, a simple placement of the head, or some sort of treatment that you can provide can really make the difference between the rest of your life on how you live it and where you're going to go. So, I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's astounding. Yeah, that's a really cool story. Let's have some more cool stories when we come back from our last break. We're talking with Dr. Leah Bortnick, and she's a PT that's working with our first responders and our veterans as it pertains to concussions, getting us healthy again. So we'll be right back to discuss more.
To the Health Engineer Show, I'm Cliff Buckley, the Health Engineer, right here on the Offbeat.
Hi, I'm Larry Corcamp. This is
Hi, my name is Susan Hamilton, and you're watching Offbeat.
Hi, this is Doreen Milano. Welcome to Big Ideas Small Business, where we will talk to Terry Arjala.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam, with Dr. Leah, talking about concussions. And as before we, before we took our last break, we were discussing some of the treatments that you perform on your first day visit, and then going on to future things. But Sam wants to talk about the great stories, the good feel-good stories, because we know as first responders and veterans, we are so reluctant, or like you said, doctor, is that we get frustrated with the treatments that do not work. But we don't look at every resource. We don't look at every tool. And when me and Sam use every tool in your toolbox, because you don't know which one's going to work for this. So you are a huge tool for our first responder and our veteran community, who are suffering, so many of them, on a daily basis from things that we normalize.
And they don't even know. Yeah.
Right. I have ringing in my ears. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it gets overwhelming. But I let it go, and I let it go. Right. And so many veterans and first responders are doing that. I met people on a boat one day that said, "Oh yeah, I got tinnitus, and it bothers me every single day, and there's no treatment for it." But maybe using your tools, it may work, it may not. Like you said, every individual is different, but why not give it a shot?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's all conservative, right? It's not like you're gonna have a blood clot from surgery or something like that. And I will never prescribe you pills because it's illegal for me to do so. Yeah. So I won't overload with anybody with opiates, because that's just not what we do.
Well, and I think that if you like, there are tons of people with tinnitus. A lot of those that were in the special operator. What is there a treatment for that in terms of, obviously you're going to look to see if they have the concussion or the TBI that is influencing that?
I'd say tinnitus is one thing that I don't treat because it doesn't have to do with balance. Hearing and balance are two different areas of the brain, two different structures of the ear. So I do know some audiologists who are working with newer and newer devices that have had some success in changing kind of the positive feedback loop that tinnitus can create. It's not perfect, but the technology is definitely getting better and better over the last 5 years. I think the devices have really come leaps and bounds from what they used to be. It's not.
Well, we like it. Yeah. We like that you're taking a holistic team approach too.
You can't not, right? Because someone comes in with a constellation of symptoms that can go across, 6 different specialties. And what are you going to say? I'll try and treat all of them when you can't. Or do you find the people that are best suited to help your patient, right? You just have to find the best people. And it takes time and it takes work, because concussions are hard and a lot of people don't want to deal with them because it takes a lot of effort to figure out what's going on sometimes. But I've been lucky to find a lot of people over the DFW area who are passionate about it. They are frustrated that nobody seems to be helping this population. So they're there if you look for it.
I like your approach because, like you said about tinnitus, you know what? I don't personally treat it, but I know a neurosurgeon, or I know somebody that does. And you've partnered in friendship, and you've approved their technology, and you're honest about that. A lot of people will say, "Nope, just come back. We'll try it again. Come back. We'll try it again." I like your approach where you know your limitations on what you can do, but you also have your own toolbox of partners that can help if you can't. And I like that honesty in somebody. That puts you above a lot of people who just, a lot of people just jump on the first responder veteran bandwagon and say, "Oh, I can cure you." And I'm glad you are being transparent, and it's refreshing to hear that from somebody. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. For those of you that are listening on your favorite podcast app, you can reach Dr. Bortnick at her clinic, which is bortnicktherapy.com. And since you're listening and you can't see the block on the screen, it is BORTNICK therapy.com. And how do people find you and follow you on social?
Sure. So on social media, I have one Facebook account right now that has my same name that you can find me. But honestly, the best place to find information about who I am and what I do is by going online to the website.
Okay, great. Again, that is bortnicktherapy.com. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your, I will call it, expertise with us, because this is a whole new avenue of possible treatment and hope for a lot of our first responders and veterans out there. So don't give up. This may be the tool in the toolbox that you all need. So connect with Dr. Leah for sure. And we will be in touch. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
And I do got to say one more thing. I'm just looking at your website now, Doc. And for those who are listening, her website is chock full of information, answering questions that you may need. Your website is wonderful. It really answers a lot, and it hits all your services. So the website is a definite go-to if you have any questions as well.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we will be in touch. You bet. And keep up the fantastic work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Wow, this was great. Really appreciate the deep dive into, the effects of this. And I know that people, watching and listening are like, oh my gosh, that's me, or that's my friend. And, there is hope. So definitely reach out. Another organization that's everybody knows their name if you're in law enforcement, it's Axon, the body cams, right? So Axon has a wellness arm, a component of what they do as part of the company, and it's called Axon Aid. And they have got a new series of videos and articles coming out, and it's all to assist our first responders who are serving our communities every single day. So check out, go to axonaid.com or just the Axon site, and you'll be able to find out more about that. Fantastic interviews. For everybody who tunes in every week, thank you so much. Keep hitting that like button. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, that little bell up there that'll tell you, hey, we're live. So come join us. We appreciate you so much for all the events that we're doing. And we have got a boatload of events coming up, from our first responder workshops to teaming up with equine therapy, as well as Heroes on the Water, which is kayak fishing. We got a bunch of the next months planned out. Visit our website, abadgeofhonor.org. Click on events. It'll take you to our calendar, and you can find out more information and how to register right there. It's as easy as that. And if you like what you heard tonight, and you want to help out, you want to serve the first responders, the best way to do that is to visit our website. There's a blue donate button right there. 100% of what you donate goes right back into the programming for our first responders and our warriors out there. So thank you so much for considering making us your go-to in terms of tithing and donations. To all the first responders out there, we are praying for you every single day. Thank you for what you do for keeping our communities safe. For our veterans, thank you for fighting the good fight that, allows John and I to do a show like this every single week and pretty much talk about whatever we want. And for all of our deployed personnel, our active duty all across the globe, thank you for keeping our shores safe here at home. Look, there's a lot more that's going to come out the next bunch of days. The best thing that you can do is, support your first responders. If you got questions, ask. There's a lot of people that are going to need help after being a witness and being involved in the attempted assassination of President Trump on Saturday. Don't be a stranger. ask your questions. We're gonna get to the bottom of it eventually. And until next week, John, take us home.
Just please keep retired Buffalo Fire Chief Corey Compentori. I'm sorry about the last name. Keep the whole Buffalo Fire Department in your prayers. Our thoughts are with you. We'll be praying for everybody in Pennsylvania who had to deal with that. And remember, social media and the news, do not believe everything you see and read, okay? Make your own decisions, make your own choices. And political violence is never okay. Stay healthy.
Till next week, everybody. Take care.
A Badge of Honor podcast is produced for the OBBN Network podcast and protected under copyright law. For content permissions, please submit your request to abadgeofhonor.com on the content page. For OBBN Network programming information, please call 214-714-0495 today.